This is Chandler. Chandler is a 14-hand native gelding, and what I'm going to do with Chandler today is I'm going to show you how to fat score. Now, fat scoring is a way that owners can assess and monitor their horse's body weight to make sure that they're at the right weight. And it's something that's worth doing every couple of weeks or so, just to keep an eye on them, see whether they're at the right weight, and check whether they're gaining or losing any. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use a 5-point system where 0 is emaciated and 5 is obese. And we're going to give Chandler 1 score out of 5 for his neck and shoulder, another for his middle, and another for his bottom, and then take an average. And the reason we do that is because, just like people, horses store their fat in different areas. So some horses might have a fat neck and a perfect bottom, others might be the other way around. So taking the 3 scores just evens that out, make sure you get an accurate score for them. Now, one thing to remember with the fat scoring is it's very important to get your hands in and have a good feel, because you can't tell how fat a horse is just by looking at them. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to feel along the top of Chandler's neck to see whether he's carrying any extra fat. And the best way I can explain this to you is if you imagine your arm and how your muscle feels when it's not tensed. And then if, like me, you have a little wobbly bit underneath, the difference is you've obviously got the untensed muscle and then the wobbly bit is fat. And that's the difference that you're feeling for. So just like with us, if it wobbles, it's not muscle. So we're going to have a feel along the top of Chandler's neck to feel for any fat cover. Now, as you can see there, it's actually quite wobbly. If you have a feel along the top of the neck, it's very wobbly and it's actually also very thick.
Yeah, it seems really thick across the hands. Yeah.
That's not muscle, that's a build-up of fat. He's actually got quite a lot of fat built up there.
That doesn't feel as floppy as I thought fat would feel.
Yes, what's happened to him here is sometimes fat can actually start to go quite firm.
Oh, right.
And it can be a sign of conditions such as equine metabolic syndrome. Now, his fat isn't too bad. I've certainly felt more solid crests, but it is less wobbly than I would expect. But you can feel the difference between what his neck is like lower down, where it's definitely just normal horse, and what it's like on the top, where it's a build-up of fat.
Yeah.
So he's definitely carrying a lot more weight on the top of his neck than we'd like to see. But we do also need to take into account what his shoulder is like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my hand down his neck and onto his shoulder blade, because when horses put weight on, they quite often store it in front of the shoulder. So what happens is your hand sort of slides straight down the neck and off onto the shoulder without stopping at all. Now, you can actually see Chandler's shoulder there. If you have a feel, you can feel he has got a bit of a build-up of fat in there.
Oh, yeah, you can feel his shoulder a bit.
Yeah.
You can feel this filling in up here.
It's got a bit of squishiness in front of it.
Yeah.
And the other thing we're going to feel for is his point of shoulder, whether that's easy to feel or whether it's sort of well covered. So if you have a feel of that, it has got a bit of a covering over it as well.
Yeah.
So on the 5-point system we were talking about, his neck alone would definitely be a 5. His neck would be obese, but his shoulder isn't actually too bad. So as an overall score for that area, I'd give him 4.5, which is somewhere between fat and obese. But what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at Chandler's middle area. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my hand over his backbone. And what we're looking for is a nice curve over their spine. Because when they put the weight on, they tend to put it on either side of the backbone, and you end up with a flat hand over their back. So I'm going to put my hand over the top, and if you have a feel there, you can see there is a slight curve to your hand. It's not completely flat, but it's not curved over as much as I'd like it to be.
But this pony's a native breed, shouldn't it be like that?
He should be broad-backed, you're quite right. Native ponies do have broad backs, but if they're the right weight, you still get that nice curve over your hand. The body shape should still drop away from the spine. The breadth comes lower down. So you should still have that curve over, and then they'll be broader, but not quite so high up as this. This build-up here is actually a build-up of fat. You can see that it's squishy.
It's quite squishy, yeah.
But what we also need to do is have a feel along his side. And what I'm feeling for here, I need to press fairly firmly, but not so firmly that he moves over. And what I'm feeling for is ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum of his ribs. Do you want to have a feel? Has he got any?
I don't think he's got any ribs.
He's a ribless horse.
I can feel...
Now, the last 3 should be easier to feel than the others.
No, I can't feel his ribs.
Can't feel them at all. No, he's definitely carrying a lot of extra weight there. The other thing that we need to remember, particularly with the native types, is they do have a tendency to store the fat in pockets sort of behind the shoulder. And you can see how much my hand's going in there. That's also a build-up of fat. So on the 5-point system, my hand could be a lot flatter. It could have filled in under here. So he's not completely flat-backed, but his ribs are very well buried. And I think I'd probably have to give him a 4.5 there as well. So again, his middle section is also somewhere between fat and obese. So if we then move on to look at his bottom, what we're looking for here is you really want to have a nice sort of upside-down C-shape, just a lovely rounded curve. And when they put the weight on, it starts to build up either side of the spine, and you get what we call an apple bottom. So you've got that sort of apple shape, if you could imagine the stalk coming out of the top of the pony's bottom. That's what happens when they put the weight on. And this is the bit you can actually have a look at this just by looking. You don't necessarily need to feel, although you can also feel to see how easy it is to feel the tailbone. And I don't think he's got one. So if I just carefully go around and have a look at his bottom. Okay, now if we have a look at Chandler's bottom, he's giving me a funny look for doing so. You can actually see that he has started to get that apple bottom. He hasn't got a huge gusset going down the middle, but he has definitely got that apple shape. So again, I'd probably have to give him a 4.5 score on his bottom. So we've given him a score of 4.5 on his neck and shoulder, 4.5 on his middle, and 4.5 on his bottom. So that's easy for my maths to work out. He's 4.5 overall. So he isn't obese, but he's definitely getting that way. He's carrying a lot more weight than we'd like to see. And it's very, very easy with the native types, because they're stocky, it's very easy to think, well, you know, he's a cob type, he's supposed to look like that. He should be stocky, but he should be stocky like a rugby player, not stocky like a sumo wrestler. And that's the difference we're looking for.